Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we are talking about the Hal Jordan version of Green Lantern, Parallax, Zero Hour, and all sorts of stuff. But before we get into that, smash like, make sure you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. We've got an awesome community here, and it's all thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. With all that said, let's dive in. The prologue to this one takes place during the death of Superman's story arc, when the monster known as Doomsday destroys Coast City, the home of Hal Jordan, better known as Green Lantern. Hal became the Green Lantern 3.5 decades ago. When he began, Hal had brown hair. Then for a while, he had white streaks on the side. But by this point in our timeline, Hal's hair has gone completely white. And he had a sizable family in Coast City, which is now just a crater. So Hal uses his force manipulation to create holograms of his dead family members. His whole world was taken away from him. So he remakes it with his ring. And he, for a time, is happy. But then it all gets shut down by the Owens, who tell Hal he will be punished for using his ring for personal gain, and that he should report to Oa to be punished accordingly. A furious Hal Jordan does fly to Oa, where he yells at the Owens for taking his family from him. Hal says he has given everything to the Green Lantern Corps, and in return, all it got him was a smoking crater. So the Owens order the nearby Green Lanterns to fight Hal, and one by one, they are knocked out. Hal takes their rings, and the Owens feel fear. Sinestro had been imprisoned on Oa, so the Owens release him. Sinestro fights Hal Jordan one-on-one, and Hal beats him. Sinestro taunts Hal, and in the end, Hal snaps his neck. Their decades-long feud finally over. Hal enters the central power battery, saying he needs more power to set things right. The Owens sense what he is about to do, and they pool their own powers to shield one of them, an Owen named Ganthet. The central power battery explodes, killing all of the Owens, but Ganthet alone survives. When the literal smoke clears, Hal Jordan is now the villain known as Parallax. Hal flies into space, and Ganthet creates one last power ring, one that can power itself. And using the last of his power, Ganthet teleports to Earth, to an art institute where two 18-year-old young men are standing. One is Kyle Rayner, the other is the hero formerly known as Superboy, who is now going by the name Powerhouse. Ganthet presents the ring to them and then passes out. Which then brings us to the main plot of today's game session, which takes place in the distant future at the end of time, where there dwells a supervillain known as the Time Trapper. There once was a hero named Hawk. He went on to become a supervillain named Monarch. And as our story begins, Monarch attacks the Time Trapper. And once the Time Trapper is destroyed, Monarch absorbs his superpowers. So now Monarch has mastery over time, able to travel through it, and even control and summon alternate timelines. Now that Monarch has time powers, he changes his name again, now becoming the villain known as Extant. And Extant begins to manipulate time. So the first thing we see is Darkseid, alive again. Metron of the New Gods appears before him in his Mobius chair. Metron says this isn't right and that the timeline's being altered. But the now living Darkseid says if time had been changed, he would have known about it. Darkseid is, of course, very wrong. In Gotham City, Batgirl captures the Joker, who is convinced that he shot her in the spine, paralyzing her. But the perfectly fine Batgirl has no idea what the clown prince of crime is talking about. She returns to the Batcave only to find Oracle there, an alternate Barbara Gordon who was shot in the spine. Needless to say, the two women are very confused as to what's going on. Elsewhere, at the home of the Linear Men, the guardians of the time stream detect disturbances. They consist of Matthew Ryder, the leader and founder of the Linear Men, an alternate future version of Ryder known as Wave Rider, Travis O'Connell, Leary Lee, Rip Hunter, and Tachyon. According to their instruments, the ends of the timeline have ceased to exist. So the very distant future and the very distant past are now just totally blank. In the 64th century, the Flash is fighting the villain known as Abracadabra. Flash sees the sky turning white, and he thinks it's Kadabra's doing. But Kadabra says he doesn't know anything about it. Wave Rider shows up and says he's telling the truth, and he tells the Flash he's seeing more than a light show. That rift of draining entropy is destroying reality as they know it, and the destructive force was working its way backwards through the time stream, simultaneously wiping out space and time. The Wally West Flash in this time period talks to Abracadabra, and Kadabra suggests that Wally run at ultimate speed into the rift, saying that should close it. So Wally does, but Wave Rider tries to stop him. This fails, and Wally dies. And Wave Rider is left floating outside the time stream, carrying the empty Flash costume, as the Earth of that era dies. Elsewhere, Vandal Savage is attacked by Hawkman, only for a bunch of parallel Hawkmen to appear, each one from a different alternate timeline, each one wearing a different costume. Vandal Savage is shocked, to say the least. The next thing we see are the original Batman and the original Superman, Bruce Wayne and Clark Kent. Batman is wearing the costume he was wearing right before he passed the mantle of the Bat over to Dick Grayson. Metron appears before them in his Mobius chair, as does the new Green Lantern, aka Kyle Rayner. Between Kyle's ring and the Mobius chair, they're able to broadcast Clark Kent rallying all of Earth's heroes together. Every hero in the world sees a glowing green version of the Silver Age Superman telling them what they must do to keep time itself from collapsing entirely. After Superman's broadcast has ended, the Justice Society of America shows up as Hawkman apprehends Vandal Savage. As the distant past is erased from existence, so too is Vandal Savage's origin erased. And as a result, Savage ceases to exist. The JSA struggles to understand what's going on as Wave Rider shows up with Wally West's costume. He gives the empty suit to Jay Garrick, the original Flash, along with the news that Wally West is dead. Speaking of the Flash family, the grandson of Barry Allen is Bartholomew Henry Allen II, aka Bart. He appears in the modern day being chased by dinosaurs when the Silver Age Superman rescues him. Superman asks Bart if he goes by the name Kid Flash, but Bart tells the Man of Steel that he prefers to go by the name Impulse. Bart explains he's from the future. Meanwhile, outside of the time stream, a door opens and a time trapper abducts Cosmic Boy of the Legion of Superheroes. They banter back and forth until the time trapper finally takes down the hood from his purple cloak, and we learn that he is Cosmic Boy. Or more specifically, one day Cosmic Boy will grow up to become the time trapper. Cosmic Boy considers offing himself in an effort to keep the time trapper from ever existing, but the time trapper tackles him and stops him, calling him a fool. Elsewhere, the Justice League answers Superman's summons, and one of them is a very pregnant Power Girl who is about to give birth to the son of Superman Red. All of the heroes meet in one place, and the Silver Age Superman is chosen to be their leader. At that same time, all of the Hawkmen merge into one new version of Hawkman, and he joins the hero army too, along with the Legion of Superheroes. As they discuss options, Guy Gardner says this is their chance to warn the young Hal Jordan what his fate is. And if they can change time, the entire Green Lantern Corps will exist again. But the Atom says changing time is super dangerous and should not be done. Guy Gardner argues that saving the entire Green Lantern Corps would be worth the risk. The Silver Age Batman and the Silver Age Superman hear the story about Hal Jordan, and they can't believe how bad things have gotten in the 1990s compared to how good things were in their own time period. Bruce Wayne learns he's dead in the 90s, so he begins to form a plan. As this is happening, the villain known as Extant attacks the Justice Society with time control. He takes them to Vanishing Point and starts to age various members of the team, killing several of them. The next thing we see is a metropolis from the future merging with the metropolis of the modern day. The result is that some of the buildings are mundane, while others from the future have been assimilated by Brainiac 13's nanobots. The villain known as Necron gets his hands on a futuristic orb made of these nanobots, which he intends to use once this whole crisis in time has been dealt with. Back in Vanishing Point, Wave Rider and Alan Scott team up to fight Extant, and Extant uses time control to make Green Lantern's ring lose its charge. Wave Rider fights him, and Extant is unmasked. To Wave Rider's surprise, Extant looks exactly like him. They banter, and Extant reveals that he absorbed Wave Rider's powers. That's why he has his golden face, etc. Elsewhere, Powerhouse is also confronted by alternate versions of himself. One was one was Kyle Rayner's friend, and when Ganthet showed up to give him a power ring, it was the Powerhouse who became the Green Lantern in that timeline. Their other counterpart still goes by the name Superboy, and he tells the mainstream Powerhouse who his father really is. The Tim Drake Robin and Impulse are here for this revelation as well. Speaking of the son of Superman, Power Girl goes into labor and begins to give birth to the son of Superman Red. And her counterpart, Kara Zor-El, appears from an alternate timeline, along with another counterpart named Uberfrau. The many Supergirls fight extant, and the alternate Silver Age Supergirl is hurt and forced to merge with the Matrix Supergirl. Uberfrau does serious damage to extant, so he retreats into the time stream. He thinks he has fled to safety, but he couldn't be more wrong. When he arrives at his destination, he comes face to face with Hal Jordan, aka Parallax. Hal tells extant that this has gone on for long enough. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman is delivering Power Girl's baby, and Hal Jordan goes to where the army of superheroes are, and he punches out the Silver Age Superman in a single blow, getting everyone's attention. Hal Jordan says he has seen everything that's happening and he knows exactly how to fix it, even if it means destroying the universe in order to make it happen. Hal says that the Silver Age Batman and the Silver Age Superman were right to be alarmed by how the 90s turned out. He says everything has gone wrong and the universe needs a protector, a real guardian, to right these wrongs. He says the universe needs him and the universe needs to be remade, turned into a clean slate. Batgirl asks if Green Lantern is crazy, and Hal corrects her, saying his name isn't Green Lantern anymore, it's Parallax. And the superheroes have failed too many times. He mentions how Doomsday destroyed Coast City, and then he tells them about the crisis on Infinite Earths. Extant destroys Kyle Rayner's power ring, then stands by Parallax as he monologues. A younger Hal Jordan is here as well, and he sees how he turns out. So he uses a rare ability that his ring can do, and it splits into two rings. Young Hal gives the spare ring to Kyle Rayner and tells him to bring back the Green Lantern Corps and undo this madness. Meanwhile, Hal Jordan begins to recreate the entire universe, sculpting it and guiding it, when suddenly he is shot in the back by Wave Rider. Hal asks why they're even fighting him, and Superman punches him, saying Hal has killed billions of people. Hal hits back, saying he will save billions more. Barbara Gordon is upset and says she just wants to exist, and she's worried if they stop Hal, that won't happen. Heroes fight heroes, and this whole thing is a chaotic mess. Then the Spectre shows up, yelling at Parallax, calling him a murderer. He binds Hal Jordan in massive supernatural chains. The Spectre says Hal Jordan doesn't get to decide who lives and who dies. And the heroes like Barbara Gordon, who had sided with Hal for a while, turn on him. Half of the heroes fight Hal. Wave Rider has the other half of the heroes shoot at him with their various energy attacks. Wave Rider acts like a prism, and all those beams become one beam which passes through him, striking a young man named Damage. And as all of this is happening, Green Arrow fires a lone arrow into the chest of Hal Jordan. And the hero known as Damage can't contain all this energy anymore, so he explodes. And the whole area is filled with bright white light. Which brings us to the epilogue. The army of heroes are standing in a park in Metropolis. The year is 1994. Time seems to have changed slightly. Guy Gardner is now a hero called Warrior. He is covered in what looks like strange red and blue alien glyphs. Power Girl is now holding her newborn baby boy, who she names Val-El, after an ancestor of hers. And Green Arrow breaks his bow and arrow, enraged that he just shot the man that was the closest thing he ever had to a brother. Meanwhile, Kyle Rayner flies to Oa, and in all of the chaos and confusion, when beings and objects from other timelines were drawn here, there is now once again a central power battery on Oa. So Kyle Rayner recites the Green Lantern's oath, charges his new ring, and sets out into the universe to start rebuilding the Green Lantern Corps. But that's a story for another day. We enjoyed playing this one. We hope that you enjoyed hearing about it. If so, as always, we would love it if you took a moment of your time to smash that like button, leave us a comment, and make sure that you're subscribed. From all of us here at the longest running superhero role-playing game on Earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure.